Miami is for sure one of the most exciting and vibrant cities. The global hotspot is also one of America's most expensive cities. But a volatile labor market, the effects of climate change and traffic are taking a toll. Nitza Soledad Perez reports that Miami is driving away more residents than it attracts.
Miami's population is shrinking. Quite a shock to many, considering how trendy the city has become. Its fame now comes with a hefty price tag.
Prices in Miami are going way high.
Alexis Morales is one of those former residents that left the city. He moved about an hour north to Pompano Beach.
While I was looking, there were all over $3,000 just for one bedroom and one bath.
He found a one-bedroom apartment in a condo with a fantastic view and access to the canal for $1,900 a month. People who came here after the COVID-19 pandemic have been outnumbered by those who said goodbye to Miami. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, Miami-Dade County had a net decrease of 30,000 people from 2020 to 2022. Many of them stayed in Florida. They just moved up to northern counties. Affluent transplants created an inflation boom. After 14 years as Miami residents, Idealis Chaparro and her partner also moved north. They went to Lakeland, 4 hours away from Miami.
First of all, because of the traffic, it was too much. Commuting, it was supposed to be 45 minutes, and I spent 2 hours in traffic.
Rent also played a significant factor for them.
A lot less, like for, let's say, 3-bedroom is the same amount for one bedroom in Miami.
This was Miami's first population loss over a multi-year period since 1970, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis.
It is concerning short term, and it definitely doesn't make the situation easier for local small businesses that are looking to grow their business, hire more people, keep great employees that they have.
Market watchers hope this is just a one-off occurrence, not a pattern. If it becomes a trend, it could devolve into less federal funding for Miami and its local government. Resources for programs are based on population.
At some point, it's going to have to give. You know, prices cannot keep going up, because you're not going to have an empty city, but you'll notice that, you know, probably service people are not going to be able to work. They're not going to be able to afford it. So, you know, what is going to happen with that part of the workforce?
Businesses are already struggling to find them. Nitza Soledad Perez, CGTN, Miami.
For more on what's driving this trend of shrinking cities, we're joined by Dave Gardner. He's the director of the documentary GrowthBusters and a co-host of GrowthBusters podcast. Dave, good to see you. You know, Miami's often been talked about as one of the best places to go to. And if I'm in Miami, I'm probably blaming the people from New York. But what's going on here?
Well, your lead-in covered a lot of it. Big cities generally are the most expensive places to live. Cost of living is high. So Miami didn't enjoy the surge of population during the pandemic that the rest of Florida did. And I also suspect that a lot of people know that Miami's going to be underwater before too long. So it's not necessarily the smartest place to relocate to. And then finally, you know, population contraction really is the new normal. Global population is supposed to peak sometime within the next 50 years, maybe sooner than later. And so world population is going to be contracting. Many countries are already experiencing it. Some cities are as well, and they really just need to get used to it. I know that for the last 100 years, they've had a chance to develop systems that depend on population growth, but it's a Ponzi scheme, and they really need to start redesigning their government finance structure and services in a way that can prosper and thrive as their population contracts.
Right.
It's going to happen.
The two fastest growing states in the entire country is Idaho and Florida. So while they might not be going to Miami because it's expensive or for another reason, they are moving to Florida and they're moving out to the suburbs. Do we see a trend of people perhaps leaving the cities for the suburbs?
I think in a lot of cases we are. Some experts have long predicted re-ruralization As the costs of living in bigger and bigger urban centers go up, people are sensitive to that. People want to live closer to their food. People are focusing more on quality of life rather than material wealth. And so living outside the city has a lot of appeal. I suspect that we're going to have a complete reversal of the urbanization that we've all been talking about for the last decade.
Right. Now, I have, of course, read about this, and I talked to my friends who live in that little island called Manhattan, and they all complain about the same things we just talked about, and they complain, and and then there's more complaining, yet they all want to be there. I mean, I say, well, why are you there if you don't like it? But I think they do like it. So I feel like people say one thing, but they ended up doing another, because ultimately cities like New York are, there's a reason why rents are so high.
Yeah, it's really kind of a conundrum. People do like to be social. People like to be around other people, maybe not around 10 million other people, and especially not if they're having to commute or otherwise navigate traffic. My hometown of Colorado Springs is actually seeing a surge in inner city population and a building boom as young people are gravitating to the city center. There's a lot to do, but we're not so big that we have all of those issues that
Right.
Miami is struggling with. So they're enjoying the entertainment, the community, but there's a limit to that.
And there's also the issue of sort of post-pandemic, right? Because when the pandemic started, everybody split and left the cities and moved out to as, I guess, far away from the city as possible, or I should say far away from traffic, because they could work from home, they could go to school from home. And I wonder, fast forward a couple years later, companies are asking their workers to come back to work, and if they're not back, they need to move back. Has that changed perhaps some of the trends that you've seen in the last couple of quarters, and then what happens over the next 5 years?
Well, the pandemic definitely was a permanent game changer in a lot of ways, and remote work, I think, is one of them. And I heard that I think something like 35% of cubicles in offices in the U.S. are vacant, permanently vacant. So that's a really big change, and I don't think we're going to have a reversal of that. So, like I said, we need to start thinking about what is the new normal, and it's not like it's been. The last 100 years were just an aberration, a temporary blip of rapid growth, and it's uneconomic now to keep up that growth. And people really do want to live good lives, quieter lives. They want to be around people, but they just don't want to be in the midst of all that hubbub and paying exorbitant home prices to live there.
So you live from Colorado Springs. I've read nothing but good things about it. So the problem, though, is, and I think you know what I'm talking about, there are people coming from all over the world, at least this country, into Colorado, and it's also having the same effect that it's driving up prices, right? Both rents and also home prices. And the local people there, I think some are okay with it, but there's a group that's not okay with it, that they're ruining the status quo, if you will. And as people discover these great rural areas and smaller communities across this country, you can't stop them from moving there, right?
Right, and it's really a good trend, because people in the future are going to need to live closer to their food. It's the good news is that this competition for housing and the high home prices, they're not going to last, because population is peaking and it's going to start going down. And cities that continue to think that they're just going to keep on doing what they did for the last 100 years, they're going to be sitting on a lot of stranded assets. It's going to become a lot more affordable to live in the urban centers.
Yeah, well, look, that's at least one positive byproduct, I guess, is affordability, right? Dave?
It might take more than 5 years, maybe.
Good to see you. Thank you very much. Appreciate the explanation, Dave, from the GrowthBusters podcast.